Hi again, this is Andy Trivet, and we're back again with a continuation of making a part in SolidWorks. This is, I guess, the third video in the series. Picking up where we left off, you'll see that there is a part that we'd started modeling which looks like a block with a hole in it. Oh, last time I said a cube. Okay, I admit it's not a cube, it's a block. If it were a cube, it would be the same dimensions on all sides. I can fix that though. I can go back, I just simply left click on the sketch, edit the sketch, and I can simply go and click the dimension that I had put in there before, 100, and it comes up. If I click it once, it says 100. No, I don't want 100, I want it to be 40. And if it's a cube, I click the other dimension, and instead of 60, I want 40. And maybe I want this hole. Well, for now I don't want this hole at all. So I'm just going to delete that. Whoops. Highlight that and delete it. Yes, I want to delete that hole. And when I clicked the accept, I'm back to a part without a hole, but this time it really is a cube. And it's gray on all sides, and there we have it. Now, it's kind of a boring gray cube, got to admit. There's things I can do with the display at this point that makes the rest of our work a lot easier. If you look up in this toolbar at the top, the first thing, well, you already know about the view orientation, where now I can click different views. And if I click the isometric, I'll get an isometric cube. But I can also change things like how the cube is actually displayed. I could make it just as a cube without surfaces, or with hidden lines removed. I could include the hidden lines, which means I can sort of see the backside. This turns out to be, I find, a really useful environment to work in, because if you're picking things that we will do shortly, you can actually select things through the block, which are the hidden lines, which you can't do easily in any of the other modes. I can't pick the edge that is far away from me. So sometimes it's better to work in the hidden line view. But sometimes it's also nice to see a cool image. And so if you go over to the right, you can, depending on how powerful your computer is, you can pick different view options. You could have a perspective view, which is vanishing points, so things look more realistic. They get smaller the further away from them you are. You can include surfaces or materials or not, so they look kind of cool. That's with view settings on the right. You can look at this apply scenes, and you'll see if you click that, there's a bunch of options. Some of them are kind of goofy, so you could put your cube in a courtyard. Well, that's kind of stupid. We won't do that. We could put it in on a city street. That's kind of stupid. On a rooftop, yeah, that's not too bad. And that just changes the lighting and the way it appears. Whenever you do this, you will find that the work of your graphics card, the computing horsepower that's required, gets to be more and more and more. And if you're not using a workstation with a good graphics card, this may bog your computer down. So if you're doing your work on a laptop, you're best off to just go with the hidden lines removed view, and this enables you to work, and you'll find that things are just fine. You can change back to just the regular kind of background, so you can see some bit of depth. With that now, well, all we have is a cube. And before we had a hole in our cube, and that was fine, but maybe I want to do something different to it. You've already seen that we can extrude parts. That's how we created the cube in the first place. Well, now we've got this basic cube, and Right now we're showing on the left-hand side in the design tree, the sketch is shown. If you want to compact that, you can just click on the little arrow to show it or not. And this is what's called a feature. So in this case, it's the base feature of our design, but let's add something to it. I'm going to add another extrusion to it. I'm going to click up in the left-hand side, an extruded boss base. Now if I do this, it's going to show on the left, telling me to pick a plane or an existing sketch. So I could pick any one of these planes I might want to do something on, and we could proceed. I'm actually going to show you a slightly different way to do it, and whichever way you go, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's nicer to do it a bit more step by step. And if you look up here in these command bar area, there's features, sketch, evaluate, and a bunch of other things. Let's just click the sketch tab. If I click the sketch tab and I go over in the left-hand corner, there is a thing called sketch, and I'm just going to create a new sketch. And once again, this just looks like what we had seen a moment ago with the boss extrusion tab. I'm going to pick a plane. In this case, I'm going to pick the top surface of the block. Well, now nothing much has changed, except that I seem to be in a sketch environment where you've got this little symbol for accepting the sketch and this little X. That's usually the best clue of what environment you're working in. But I don't quite know what I'm doing. I thought I clicked the top surface. Now if I try to do something, try to draw something, oh yeah, that looks like I'm drawing it kind of on that top plane. If you click escape, I just clicked escape, that backs out of whatever command you're in. If I want to draw something on this plane, it's kind of hard to draw it looking at a glancing angle like we are right now. So I think I'd pretty much like to see it actually like I'm drawing it on that face in the plane that I want. Well, this view orientation button up here, I can go and click the top, and now I'm looking at that top. You'll notice that it looks like a cube, well, that's foreshortened, it's called, or it's got a perspective, and that's because I believe I had the perspective turned on. Turn off all of those things. And now with this sketch, I'm going to draw some circles. Here, here, and you'll see that it's trying to help me maybe align the circles. So if I slide around and I drag my mouse, I'm not pressing any buttons, the little pencil for the next circle, it's picking out what are called snaps. And in this case, if I slide it there, it's picking out snaps that are aligned with the other two circles. And I've just been right-clicking, and those are my circles. I didn't really care where I put them or what sizes they were, because I'm going to go back now and explicitly click Smart Dimension, and I'm going to give those dimensions. Let's say they're going to be 10 millimeters. And I'm going to click the next one, and it's going to be 10 millimeters. And I'm going to click the next one, and it doesn't matter again where I put the dimension. I can put it there, and it's going to be 10. And 10. Now, if I want to align them up so that they're somewhere where I want them to be, I can continue clicking dimensions. I'm going to make that 10. And I can dimension the center of the next one to that end, or I can dimension it to this end. Let's say I'm going to dimension it to there. And I'm going to make that 20. Now you think, well, what about the distance from the center of this to this end? I can click that to there, and it's showing as 10. But notice that it's in a different color. So these ones are in black. 10 is in black, 20 is in black, and this is in blue. That color difference is indicating a driving versus a driven dimension. A driving dimension defines the geometry for me. A driven dimension is just an indicator. Now if I go into this, and I click that to edit it, I can edit it. Oops. Sorry about that. I can click to edit this. I can edit it over in the left-hand window. And let's say I want to make that 15 millimeters. Nothing changed. That was still 40. And if I accept that, something weird has happened. All these things have moved around. It's because in order to be horizontal, those parts can't be 20 and 15 like I showed it. In fact, SolidWorks has tried to solve the geometry to our intention, and they came up with something that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted them to be horizontal. So there was a problem with this dimension. If I delete that, and I select this dimension, that's still 20. That's good. But I really wanted these two pieces to be horizontal with each other. So I really screwed things up by over-dimensioning these distances. But this gets into some of the fundamental problems or challenges you'll have with any CAD package, which is it's just solving geometry and you're defining the geometry. Sometimes you define geometry that isn't possible. Whenever I build a part, I have to think very carefully about the fundamental geometry I'm trying to solve. In this case, I click the center point of that circle, and it shows me that there's two relations that are in place, two distances. That the distance to the outer part of the circle and the distance to the edge of the edge of the cube. Now I could also hold the control button down on my keyboard and select the other center of the circle, and you'll see that this shows 0.2 and 0.4, which in this case are the points of the two different circle centers. It shows that there's only one relation between them, which is this distance 20. And then it shows relations I could add. Well, I'm going to add horizontal. Oops. I guess I was going to add vertical. And when I do that, you can see that this circle and this circle are now in the same line as each other. So now whenever I try to move any of these parts, these guys stay together. The fact that I can move it, I'm trying to move it sideways, let's say, and it's giving me an X and it says it can't do that, and moving it up and down it can do. The fact that I can move it up and down kind of indicates that I haven't fully defined what this part is supposed to be like. So if I click either one of these points, this one, or if I click this one, it shows me the relations that that point has to the rest of the geometry. And that's all. Now if I want to define that more fully, I can click my smart dimension again, click that center and that at the top line. Now it's saying 9.49. I want that to be 10. So now I've gone out of the dimension tool, and if I select either one of these centers, I'm trying to move it, it won't move. And it won't move because I've fully defined where everything is. If I now try and dimension something different, let's say I'm going to try to dimension this center to this edge, and there it's saying 10. Now when I click that, it's asking me to make this dimension driven or leave this dimension driving. So if I'm going to make that dimension driving, then one of the other dimensions has to be let go. If I say it's going to be driven, then that's going to show up in blue, as I mentioned earlier, and that doesn't matter what we try to type there to change it, we can't change it. The geometry is already set, and that's good. Now the other ones, I could go and do the same thing, dimensioning them, or I could select that and control select that point, and I'm going to make them, I guess it was horizontal in this case, and I could take this and hold control down and select this one and make them vertical, and I can select that point number 3, hold control down and that point and make that horizontal. And right now it's telling me that it doesn't like something about the sketch. It's telling me that one of those things is unsolvable. And so if I've made a mistake in my geometry, it'll show up as these red arrows. Now if I delete that horizontal, which I could also do by deleting that, and if I take this and this, make it vertical, well that didn't work. And I delete that thing that I just did foolishly. I'm trying to select that part again. This is the point where I start to get annoyed with SolidWorks. If I right click over the point that I'm selecting and I try to pick that, and then I go running off to ask for help because I've messed something up. No worries, I'm just going to delete that entity. Delete that. So these parts are still the same. Unfortunately in Sketch there isn't really, well there is an undo, I'm just going to go back and undo. There. Undo back to before I made that mistake. And now if I click this and try and move it around, it's still moving up and down. My problem is that I tried to define it, forgetting that what I really need to do is define the dimension from there to there. And I want to make that 10. Ah, there. That's better. Now I have a cube with 3 circles on the top of it. Click accept, and now all I've done is I've made this sketch on the top. But if I click that sketch and highlight it and go over to features and click boss extrude, maybe I want to extrude that 5 millimeters. And that shows me that I've raised them up 5 millimeters. And there we have it. I could add a bunch of other interesting features to this. For instance, I don't like necessarily the look of that, so I'm going to highlight the boss extrude with the left mouse button, and I'm going to click edit feature. I could go back with that and I can change the depth of the extrusion. I'm going to add this thing called a draft, just because I can. And I'm going to make it a 5-degree draft. Well, that made those little blocks tapered. That's kind of cool. If you're making something that will be injection molded, then that's a good idea. So now we've come a long way, baby. We've created a cube with 4 nubs on it. I can go and admire this beautiful piece of work. I can add all kinds of other graphics features to it so it looks better. And there we have it. That's it for now. We'll move on in the next video. Thanks for watching.